Today is a rainy Wednesday, April 26th, and you have found the Living Youth Podcast. I'm here as always with my podcast partner and co-host, Mr. Wallace Smith. How are we doing, Mr. Smith?
I feel fantastic, Mr. John Robinson. Thank you for asking.
That's a very high bar. We're also joined today by a guest who I'll introduce now as the Director of Living Education, Mr. Jonathan McNair. How are we doing today, Mr. McNair?
Great. Good to be here.
What are we going to talk about with our guest today, Mr. Smith?
Well, our topic, one, we just wanted him back because it was so nice to have him in the past.
Thank you.
But also, there's an event coming up, and we wanted to talk about that event and give him a chance to explain it to us because our audience out there, we know some of you are interested because you've heard it in announcements. We're going to ask Mr. McNair all about the upcoming L4T.
Sounds great.
Let's go. Welcome back, everyone, and we are here again with Mr. Jonathan McNair. Thank you, Mr. McNair. He is a busy person, and we're very grateful that he found the time, especially as the Living Education year is wrapping up. We know you guys have a lot going on, and I want to get ahead of myself in terms of questions about the L4T program, because I remember when they were first kind of trotted out and how exciting that idea was. So we're just very grateful that you have been willing to sit back down with us, Mr. McNair. Thank you.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
You bet. Now, before we actually get into L4T, I'd like to ask you a little bit, if you don't mind, about Living Education. I know the year is wrapping up. I have had a son in the program this year and have been delighted to see everything that he's done and what they've gone through and all the different things. If you would, let us all know, how is the year wrapping up? And in particular, because I've heard exciting things, what do you see for next year for Living Education specifically?
Well, good. We have graduation coming up on May 26th. So we are in the home stretch now.
A month from today, yeah.
We've got a couple of weeks of classes. And then one of the things we do at the end of the year as a tradition is we do a class trip. So we take all the students up to the Outer Banks. And it's really neat because we have a chance to spend 3 days together just decompressing, nice. Thinking about the year, going to the Orville and Wilbur Wright Museum and all that good stuff there. So that's the end of the year, graduation, and then students are off in different directions. Some are going to Thailand. We have 4 students who are going over to a teaching program we have happening in Thailand. Others, to camps and different things over the course of the summer. So, it's an exciting end to the year, and we're preparing for next year. We've got looks like 22 students next year coming in.
Wow.
So, a lot happening to get that ready. Been communicating with them, telling them what to expect. Planning orientation week where it sounds like all we do is just do fun things, right? Because we go whitewater rafting in the orientation trip, but there is a lot of time in class as well. So let me just, not give the wrong impression here.
No false advertising.
No, exactly.
Definitely some class time.
Expect we do adventure every week, but we do it, every other week or once a month. But it's been a good year.
I've heard some very positive things about the activities, and that the end of the year one in particular I've heard is quite enjoyable.
It's I
might have to distract my wife when this part of the podcast comes out, because she has asked me to take her to the Outer Banks for some time,
and you've never done it.
I have not. So she might actually sign up if you have room for.
I can't believe you've never taken her to the Outer Banks.
I'm a terrible husband.
That's horrible.
As we all know. That's right. Now right now, if we're listening to this at home, I'm sure she's turning to me and nodding her head.
There you go.
Okay, well that is exciting. I'd heard that it was actually quite a crowd coming next year, and definitely we'll be praying for all the folks going to Thailand. That is such a fantastic opportunity, and really looking forward to what they're going to be able to do over there. But that said, we did want to talk to you specifically about the L4T program, and before we get into any kind of details, when is the event? What's going on? Because some may not have actually heard in the announcements. So
sure.
What are the dates and places and such?
So it's June 2nd through 4th. And I say 2nd, that's Friday. So the arrival is in the evening, dinner time. And departure, that's on Friday evening. And we have the Sabbath together, and we have activities and things Saturday evening. And, of course, Sabbath services. And then on Sunday, we have a morning session. And we're done by noon, 1 o'clock. The idea, you might say, well, that's really short, but the whole idea is to make it accessible to as many as possible, which in this day and age, even getting off work for the feast and different things is challenging. So we wanted to make it where it's accessible. We have a good time in basically the weekend, allowing people to get home in time that they can hit work if they need to Monday morning. And so that's the whole idea, is to keep it short and sweet and have as many participate as possible. But it's June 2nd through 4th at Blowing Rock, North Carolina. It's up in the mountains, beautiful spot. I mean, you can see Grandfather Mountain across the valley from the place. It's a neat place.
It does sound really neat. And the crowd you're looking for is what? Who are invited to come?
So 18 to 30. And we really stick with that age. This is not a singles activity, singles of all ages. It really is geared toward young adults. And our topic matter, the activities we do, we tend to have very active type, an active type program. So those who are, the young adults is what we're really aiming at.
Okay, great. Yeah. And that's what I thought. And all the more since that's what the podcast is here for teens and young adults in the church. We definitely wanted to have the opportunity to talk about it.
So I had one question about that as for a clarification. Are there invitations being extended out to certain kids, or is this kind of an open enrollment, if you will?
I mean, we've announced it in the weekly update, so any young people between the ages of 18 and 30 are welcome to register. We've already had probably half a dozen or so register. We just opened it up last week. They register. We send some information back so they can pay for the activity, and I think we're charged. I think it's $125 this year, which is pretty good for 2 nights and all the food and so on and so forth. So no, it's open to all our young adults in the church.
So what would you say because I could see myself being in this situation if I were back to being 21 or something. What would you say to a young man or young woman who feels like one of two things? Either it feels kind of presumptuous for them to say, "Oh, I could be a leader. Let me."
Because L4T means leaders for tomorrow. Not quite.
Yeah, but the idea, this is about being. I'd say we could have called it P4T, but L4T sounded better. and actually, when Mr. Weston first came up with this, honestly, I was a little bit nonplussed because I said L4T. Actually, it's living, not leaders.
I was about
living
to say,
for tomorrow.
So it just hit me that it's
tomorrow.
like, oh, you're being kind and not correcting me. So good job.
But I thought, Mr. Weston, that is just so corny. L4T. I mean, it sounds like a bad joke. L4T. But you know what? He said, no, we need to say L4T. It's got a ring to it. I said, okay, great, wonderful. So it's living for tomorrow. The idea is learning about ways of living, ways of life that can be learned and implemented today for a good tomorrow, for an effective tomorrow.
That's a great clarification because probably because my information is really quite dated, I thought it was something that was geared more towards training leaders. And I know in a sense that we're all in kind of a training for leadership. But so what I'm hearing is then that really this is something to help young people as they transition to being an adult, or they're already an adult, and also as a great launching point for them being a part of the church.
And also to be together with like-minded people. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have young people who are in a place where maybe there aren't even other young people in the congregation. Or there are, but it's only 2 or 3 of them. So this is an opportunity to get together with young people who are of like mind, who have the same general values in terms of the church. We recognize that obviously we have people coming from even different parts of the country and all that. So obviously we're not all yellow pencils, but the whole reason for being there is to fellowship, meet other young people who are of the same mind.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So definitely the fellowship and mingling is a big part of it. By the way,
definitely.
I have to apologize. I just looked up the announcement, not that I wasn't listening, and literally the first sentence on the announcement that everybody heard at services, so now they know that I wasn't paying attention. It literally says, L4T means living for tomorrow. It's literally the first sentence on the announcement.
Well, then for all the people out there like us that weren't listening to the announcements.
Now you know. But I totally interrupted you, Mr. Robinson. Did you have another question about it?
It's gone.
Oh, look at me. I'm so sorry I watched that from your mind.
Oh, No, I remember now. Okay. I heard from my camp experience, there were a lot of kids that was a big deal as well. that, maybe back in their area there's not a lot of kids, or maybe they even go to public school, to come to camp and just be around a bunch of kids that keep the Sabbath and keep the holy days, and they don't feel like such an outlier in their areas. An important thing to be around people who believe what you do.
Well, you mentioned camp, and so here's a question: when a young person goes to camp, okay, and they're campers and they love that experience every year. Now they turn 18, 19, 20, and in fact they can't go to camp maybe because of their work or their school or what have you. How do they get together with friends? Well, the feast, certainly, right? Maybe the spring holy days, but how do they get together with friends in a way? I mean, I guess they could try to meet up over some time or another. But that's exactly why this was instituted years ago when we first kicked it off. Is Mr. Weston said, look, we need to provide an opportunity for young people now at this stage of life to get together with other young people, and not as in a singles mingle type thing of frankly even singles with all ages. We took some flack for that, believe it or not, when we said no, if you're 40 or 50 or 60 or 70, this is not for you. Every once in a while we get a complaint saying, I want to be there. This is for young adults, because young adults are facing the beginning of life, and they're looking. It's a different scenario than down the stream. So the issue with camp, what you're talking about, that's exactly why this was started, is to provide an opportunity framed for this age group, which means it's going to be short over a weekend, so they can not impact work or school or whatever else.
Right. You actually answered one of the questions I was going to ask later, which is how is it that L4T fits in with the church's other programs? And that kind of shows it's kind of part of you're developing through life, and this is something for that next stage. And the I don't know how to put it, the tension that you mentioned in terms of, say, older singles want to be a part too. I remember way back at the Charlotte Family Weekends where we had seminars, and one of the seminars, and I was assigned to do one, and I think Mr. Weston was doing the other one, but one was for younger singles, and one was for mature singles, they said. And I was doing the mature singles one, and the people would come in, they say, well, hey, how do we know if we're a younger single or a mature single? And I thought, look, I am not going to draw that line for you. But ask yourself, do you feel like an immature single or a mature single? And if you feel mature, come on in. But I think everyone still recognized the wisdom of that distinction, because you do face different challenges at different stages in your life. And, age brings a certain maturity and a wisdom, but we hope for younger people to give them the opportunity to learn more from other people's experience before they have to learn through the harshness of real world experience. And in a case like this, it really does make sense to pull together people that are facing kind of an age band range of particular challenges and things they're facing. So yeah, it does make sense to do that.
Well, even as speakers and instructors, and we're heavy on the over the weekend, there's a lot of instruction, but it's a lot of it's interactive. Sometimes we'll do things like last year, for example, we broke everybody up into teams, and they had to go out and videotape their group acting out a particular biblical story with a lesson to it. And it was hilarious. What they put together was really funny. We watched them all later. So it is very interactive, but there is a lot of instruction. But from the perspective, let's say, of the teacher or the speaker, when you look at your audience and you say, look, you guys are facing a challenging society and culture. So you need to work on this and this and this. You need to think about this and this and this for the culture that you're going to face over your lifetime. Well, if you're speaking to someone who's multiple decades older, you're just not addressing it the same way.
Right.
This is the way it used to be when you were young. Now here's what you're facing. It's a totally different different perspective. So it allows us to really emphasize to the audience, to the young people who are there, you're building right now, you're doing things that are going to impact the rest of your life. So do the right things, do good things.
That what you just mentioned, because I think at least one of my sons, I can't recall how many of them went, but the one that stands out is Benjamin went to the L4T last year because he showed us the video that they made, and they were doing one based on I think Daniel and some Proverbs, but Yeah, it was him, Charles Austin, Nathan Kroon, and I think it might have been one other person, but it was hilarious. But it got the point across, you know, and the challenge they had to try to make a sensible lesson and explanation on a topic, while at the same time it was just a lot of fun. You could tell they were really enjoying themselves doing something like that. And maybe we must have that somewhere. Maybe I can actually post it on the website.
Except I promise, the one thing I said to them when making these videos is they would not be posted online.
Oh, no.
Because so
Okay,
they could be able to just have fun with it.
I definitely won't do it. That's good. That's good. Then you guys just have to imagine. Then tell you what, just imagine they made the most amazing video, like Oscar-worthy video of instructions.
Maybe they could make a video of how they think the video was.
Yeah, I literally said, you guys, look, we're not going to post this anywhere.
Very wise.
So just have fun and do it. Don't worry about making mistakes or whatever.
Good on you. But it did look like they were really enjoying themselves.
They were,
and that actually helps to helps contribute to another question I was going to ask, which to give people an idea, which you've touched on a lot, but maybe in kind of a more organized way. I don't want you to lay out exactly what they will do. That's part of the fun, is going to experience it. But still, for those who might be a little concerned, like they're not really sure what to expect, maybe you can kind of paint a picture that, look, you're going to come to Blowing Rock, and here's what to expect. You know, here's what it's going to be like.
So we asked that everybody be there for the Friday evening meeting, dinner time or before, but be there for the Friday evening meeting, because that's where we frame the challenge, where we frame, here's what we're facing today, here's what you're facing today, and we don't go into the answers as much as framing the challenge, and then particularly with an emphasis on the theme that we have for that particular year, and then of course they fellowship afterwards. So we have it's I say it's a little bit like a Bible study, but not necessarily a Bible study as much as I said, framing the challenge.
Right.
Then Sabbath, we have a Sabbath service in the morning, and again, a lot of this is frankly fellowship. So in the morning, they're eating together. We even have teams that will be helping to prepare the meals and all that, so they learn to work together. Sabbath services and lunch again. We do a lot of eating and fellowshipping, and then in the afternoon, we usually have a study session where we have a particular topic that we address. We go to the Bible, and then generally speaking, what we do is break them into groups where they have to actually come up with answers to the challenge. It might be some basic doctrines that they've got to be able to defend. It can be a number of different things, but we'll frame. I hate to use the word workshop. It's more of a study session because it is a Sabbath, so we're not working, but it is a study session, and they'll work on that for usually a couple of hours. And then what we'll generally do is bring them back together where they have an opportunity to share what they've learned with their team and this type of thing. So it's very interactive in the session in the afternoon. And then we have the evening meal, and then we have an activity afterwards that evening. And that tends to be, again, it depends on and I haven't actually nailed it down for this year. If we have enough, we might do a dance, if it depends. With COVID, that has been off the table, but typically years gone by, sometimes we'd have something like a dance, or some type of activity. One year we were at Saratoga Springs, upstate New York, and we had an ice skating, broom ball game on the ice, and on the Saturday night. That was a blast, a lot of fun. So we'll do something that will get everybody a chance to interact and all that. Sunday morning we have some sessions again, very interactive, and then we have some type of an outdoor activity that, again, I'm not going to give away, but they will be. So it's a mix of indoor, outdoor,
right,
and fellowship. And again, we try to be done by early. I mean, the schedule is to be done by noon. And what that does is that gives people an opportunity, if they want, like up there, for example, sometimes we'll have some young people who will want to go see Blowing Rock or something. They want to go in the little town, do some shopping, tourist type stuff. That they can do whatever they want to do.
Yeah,
they're
they'll
on
have
their
some
own
time
after
to
that.
do that afterwards if they want to do that.
But that's the general framework of it. Yeah.
No, that's really helpful. Especially, I do appreciate, and you've mentioned it a couple times, how y'all have worked to. Because we have young adults, we hope they're out there being productive. They got jobs. They're doing their best to earn their way, or maybe even working on an education. And to be able to fit it as much as you can really into a weekend like that is really helpful.
So how many years has it been now since your first L4T?
I was afraid you were going to ask that.
I figure it's got to be 12 to 15 years ago.
We started it at when we had camp up in Michigan. So that has to be maybe 15 or 16 now, because
okay.
more than that,
Okay.
maybe
2008
when
or
was-
so, 2007. I can't
yeah.
remember, but I was there the last year in Michigan, and that was you know what, 2001, 2006, 2007, 8. I
That's
can't remember,
because
somewhere around there, but you're
a
about
math
15.
guy. You can figure it out. You see, I couldn't even begin to, but you can
But I
figure
can't
it out. You're a
remember
math
real
guy.
life very well, and the exact year, but it was around 2007, 2008.
Well, that's the trick. I'll tell you what we did. We because we realized we've got camp here,
Right.
and we have a number of young adults coming to camp, helping, serving on the staff. They don't have that many opportunities throughout the course of the year to get together and all that. So Mr. Weston and I don't remember whose idea it was. It was probably his, but I was there helping, and we did it together. But we said, let's have something for the young adults a couple days before camp. So that's what we did. Is we had like 2 days of doing this type of thing before camp, where we were able to meld them together as a group. We were able to challenge them, teach them, and we were able to have an activity, a pre-camp activity with these young adults that were on our staff. And I think that first year we probably had 30 or more. So it was a big group. And we did a second year, and we said, well, maybe we can do this other places. And that's why we did a couple. We did one up in Vermont one year with skiing. We did it at wintertime over the winter break. And part of it was, like I said, skiing in the Ozarks area one time. Then there was different places over the years, but we did it for a few years, and then it lost momentum, and then we didn't for a number of years. And we're trying to bring it back. That's the idea.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, what I was wondering is, when you were describing it, you talked about at the very beginning, you're kind of framing a challenge for them, and part of it is how they can cope with the society around them as they're headed off to take on the world, as it were. And I started making me wonder, what have you seen since that first couple 15-year time period? How much has the culture shifted? How much is, as you frame
wow.
what they're up against out there in the world, how much has that shifted even in 15 years? Because it's been amazing how much, from what I've seen.
Yeah, society, it's been like a seismic shift in that decade and a half or so.
It just seems like us growing up in the 80s, through high school and in the adult years, was a breeze compared to what you have to cope with as a kid right now, or just kids,
or young adults.
Yeah. Well, you're right, no doubt about it. But I think that what we've tried to do is try to frame things so that they can, whether it was 20 years ago or whether it's today, the same principles can be used. So I'll give you an example. Last year, one of the themes we had, I forget the exact title, but it was basically about our roadmap to success. So if you think about it, and I did a slide, for example, where I said something about how to get to Charlotte, and I had a map of Ohio there, and I put Charlotte as as a dot on the map. I might have used another Kentucky or something, but the idea was, when you look at this map, even though it says Charlotte on there, it's actually an inaccurate map. You're not going to be able to use that to find Charlotte, right? Because it's a map of another state, and so we use that as a means to teach. Look, you need to have a map. Whether you live in 30 AD or whether you live today, we need to have a map to deal with the challenges of our time and culture, and that map is the Bible. So
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So when it was a Bible study theme a few years ago, was how to so it was for the single and young marrieds here in Charlotte, and the theme was basically, is the Bible still relevant in this modern age where we have all this social media and stuff? And I love that. And I volunteered to do the first one. I don't know how it worked, but I got to do the first one, and I wanted to do it because nothing's changed. The God's advice and principles are timeless, and it doesn't matter what kind of culture or time you live in. The tools for being successful and having a good relationship with your friends and family and with God, it never changes.
Right.
So that makes makes a lot of sense.
You wrote an article about that. I might try to add a link to that, on the page for the podcast, because it was about the 5 people you'll meet online on social media, and that was one of your main elements in that was, social media may be modern, but the principles of the Bible are timeless, and they still inform how you interact and how you respond to people, even if everything else is completely different. And having an opportunity like L4T to help emphasize these eternal values and grounding them, especially as young adults right now, just yeah, fantastic.
Well, you think about it. Think if you were a young adult in ancient Corinth. I mean, you talk about a society where debauchery was a way of life.
Yeah.
It was a challenge, and today it's a challenge. So I think for all of us, one of our biggest challenges is applying what we read in the Bible to our life, our daily life, because we can read it, but then we have a situation here that are unique to our time. But like as you said, the timeless principles of the Bible, but how do we apply them?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, and that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to coach our young adults, but also we don't have all the answers.
Right.
So I think sometimes when we wrestle with them together, they wrestle with them with each other. We wrestle with them, I'll say, as instructors or leaders in that process. We come to strategies that because we inspire each other, we encourage each other, we inform each other. So, that's a big part of what we're doing is trying to come to a good understanding of how to deal with today's world with biblical principles.
Yeah, I don't know how many more questions Mr. Robinson has, and this one I'm going to preview before I make another comment because I want to do you a kindness since you're here. Because sometimes questions like this can catch people off guard, and we do try to be nice. I'm going to ask you in a moment if you have any particular special memories from an L4T in the past that you happen to go, there was this one time.
What if I already said them?
Well, no, it's too late. You got to come up with another one. You got to come up with another one.
So we're not that nice.
If not, just say go back to minute 17 or whatever. But what I was going to say is, what you have me thinking about is the wisdom of Mr. Weston's name L4T, and living for tomorrow. Not just because we're the living church of God, living. Look at that. That's marketing brilliance. But also, maybe I'm overselling it there. However, part of what I see today, and I'm not trying to be really negative real quickly, but it was something I was listening to even this morning about this poor young man, this 18-year-old who thought he was a girl, so he goes in to get all the surgery and stuff and ends up dying. And I won't go into the details, but regardless, it was clearly a consequence of what he was doing, because this is actually you're trying to do surgery that is the exact opposite of what God has done through nature. And I won't go into the details. The details are terrible, but the result of it is he actually dies as a result of this attempt to cause his body to look like a woman's body. And really what you see in a lot of these, it made me think of it recently, that if you have if supposedly gender is a social construct, well, even if you were to grant that, which I would not, I would say gender is clearly grounded in sex. You had a fantastic sermon on that recently, Mr. McNair, which hopefully is online by now. But even if you were to grant that, well, then what are they doing? If someone is having confusion about their gender, which is the right course? Actually helping them address their confusion about a social construct, which should be something you can deal with. Or let's alter their body physically through surgical and chemical means so they become a medical object for the rest of their life. What are they doing with them? I guess getting back to the L4T, we have a culture now that essentially is teaching young people to sacrifice almost the entirety of their future because of how they feel right now, right? You don't feel comfortable now. Well, tell you what, let's do all these things that will completely and radically alter your future in ways you can't even fathom. But you know what? It should make you feel better now, right? They're really sacrificing their tomorrows because something about their today is uncomfortable. And what I see is striving for, focusing on these sort of eternal biblical principles in living for tomorrow is, in a sense, you're living for tomorrow, but it's about living a better today. It's how do I make decisions today? How do I interact with biblical principles today in such a way that I'm not sacrificing the rest of my tomorrows? The rest of my tomorrows will be better. How I'm choosing to live today can actually give me better tomorrows in the future, let alone the eternal tomorrow that's coming. And, I see a logic in that living for tomorrow name. So I don't know, just want to throw that out there. It seems so, in that sense, counter to what I see today that it makes me appreciate, the idea all the more.
Well, and I'll mention, by the way, too, when young adults come to a program like this with other young adults, So they see other people, as I said before, who are of like mind. And also, let's say last year with Mr. Weston and Mr. Dawson, myself, my brother were there, and we're able to talk with them and challenge them and coach them and help them to understand that they are not just this is not just for them; it's also for the sake of the church. So, in other words, we can actually challenge these young people to realize that we can call it leadership, or we can just call it service, or we can call it whatever, but they're going to have a role, and they already are beginning to have a role right now in helping the church to be what it needs to be. And so they're relevant. In other words, it's not just it's God's principles are relevant, but they are relevant.
Right.
And they're accountable, and they're responsible, and so sort of to challenge them to rise to the occasion. This gives an opportunity with others of like mind for them to get that sense of their part in the church that you can address when they're together there, as opposed to one here, one there in a local congregation. So it's really, to me, it's an inspiring opportunity to look at these young people in their eyes and think, man alive, I appreciate them, and I want them to be able to take that baton and run with it. And it's just very gratifying to me to be there and to talk with them. And
I bet
they'll have an advantage, because I didn't really have that awareness until I was into my 30s. I mean, it was just so, having grown up in Worldwide and going, well, we had a road trip to get there, but going into the Living Church of God, I just took for granted that I was going to church, because what you do is you go to church, and I didn't think about myself as whether if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're a young adult or even a teen, like it or not, in the future, this church is yours, because that's just how it works. And I had to really, it would have helped me in my 20s to start thinking about the fact that, like it or not, you have a responsibility later as you get older to shepherd the church.
And the thing about it is in hard times, who carries the weight? I'm not talking even hard economic times or hard when times are difficult. Historically, and I'm talking about just in society, it's the young people, right? When wars happen, when there are economic challenges, who carries the weight? It's young people. Older people aren't able to may have the wisdom, but don't have the energy, the strength, and it's young people who have to be relied upon. Look who God uses in the Bible. So many times, God uses for important, let's say, activities that took a lot of energy. Look at the 12 disciples. These were young men. Young men and young women have been called upon to carry a burden, and honestly, I believe that's what our future holds. And so, when I see young people in this age group, I look at people who are going to have to step up and carry maybe even a physical burden. I mean, caring for people, taking care of people who are within congregations, in sometimes very physical ways. So this is the next generation will be facing potentially the most difficult time in human history. And if we're not focusing our attention, I say those of us who are 1 or 2 years older than that 18 to 30, if we're not really trying to do everything we can to inspire them and prepare them to take that on, I think we're not doing our job.
Right. Well, I'm so glad you guys are doing this. So you've had time now. Did you think of a positive memory?
I said that boot hockey game, and I
you want to go with that?
I'm sorry, but I already blew blew it, because when I think about it, I think it was so much fun. We were having a blast.
It was. Well, let me go with that, because I have to admit I was too embarrassed to ask at the time. But what did you call it?
Broom hockey.
Broom hockey?
Yeah.
In the world?
That's a northern thing. You guys,
I'm from Texas. Yeah, there's not even ice in Texas.
You can do it on a pond. You can do it on a parking lot that's iced over for ice skating or something. But this is great if you don't either you don't have any ice skates or you don't have any ice skating skill. You just have your boots on, and what you do is you get a broom. You give everybody brooms, and then you have a ball or something like that, and you hit it just like you're playing hockey, but you're just doing it with brooms and sliding around on your boots.
It doesn't sound like you can get a lot of leverage on the ball.
It is. You actually mostly slip and slide, and it's just a
See,
blast.
when you're from Texas and you see a frozen anything, that sounds like a good way to die. It's always thin ice in Texas.
That's right. Oh, absolutely. Well, I think that's all the questions we had. Anything?
Yeah, nope, I'm good.
Well, that's it. You know,
I'm ready to sign up. How do I do it, Mr. Smith?
Well, you got to go back in time and be 18 to 30, I'm afraid, Mr. Robinson.
I've aged out of the program.
That's right. But hey, all of you listening, we do hope you'll take these L4T possibilities seriously when they come your way, because what an opportunity they really are. This one in particular, if you want to sign up, we'll have a link online, but really all it can do is take you to where you sign into my LCG.
Yeah,
but the link is right out there. You guys go sign up, and we'd love to see some of you guys at Bling Rock. And Mr. McNair, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and coming and talking to everybody.
Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
No, absolutely.
Smith and Robinson.